7 and 8. Some of the things we'll be learning this week, we're going to learn about age-specific health. So with that, you will be able to define maternal, infant, and child health and explain the importance of those health indicators as a way to measure somebody's health. You will be able to define family planning and why that's important. You will be able to define maternal mortality rate and preconception and prenatal care and what the influence those have on pregnancy outcomes. You will be able to list the major factors that contribute to infant health and mortality and identify the leading cause of childhood morbidity and mortality. In addition, you will be able to explain how health insurance and healthcare services affect childhood health, gain an understanding of different governmental programs developed to improve maternal and child health, why it's important for community health workers to be aware of the different health concerns of the various age groups, and then we'll go over those different age groups and some key health indicators for each of the age groups. So the items due this week, you will pick a topic for your advocacy letter, and again, that's the letter due at the end of the semester. You will have to complete a maternal and child health care blog, Chapter 7 and 8 quiz, and the discussion board. Just to review what the advocacy letter is, again, the purpose of the letter is to persuade someone or an agency to change something to increase the health of a specific population. You are the one who will determine who your audience is for your letter and what your topic is. So for this week's assignment, you're going to choose a topic that you are interested in, and this is a topic you will focus your advocacy letter on. What you need to do is you can research health indicators either at a school, in the community, statewide, region-wide, nationwide, and choose one topic that you are interested in. Ideas that I have provided for you can be cafeteria food, maybe there's a polluted river, air quality, sweatshops in other countries, but choose one specific topic that you are interested in. And for this week, you are just going to write down the topic you are interested in and tell me why you are interested in it. The Maternal and Child Healthcare blog. The purpose of this is to consider the health risks of pregnancy and infants. You will use your book, Chapter 7, to research the health risks for pregnant women and infants. And then for this blog, I want you to identify what you see as the greatest health risk for pregnant women and infants today. What do you think can be done to improve these health risks? And pull in information from your personal experience. Maybe you know someone who has suffered a difficult pregnancy or had an infant who was sick. Your own observations, along with the information you read in the text. Moving on to the content for this week. We look at age-related profiles to help identify risks and target interventions. So for the first two age groups we will discuss, we'll talk about infants, which is 1 year or less, and then children, which is considered years 1 through 9. Maternal, infant, and childhood health encompasses the health of women of childbearing age from pre-pregnancy through pregnancy, labor, and delivery, as well as the postpartum period. And then the health of the child prior to birth all the way through adolescence. So MIC is maternal, infant, and child health. These statistics really help show the health of a community. In recent years, the U.S. has seen a decline in maternal, infant, and childhood mortality rates. So again, that's death rates for maternal, infant, and children. But there are challenges that still remain, particularly when we look at racial disparities. What we see generally are those that belong to an underrepresented population in the U.S. generally suffer from poorer health outcomes compared to white people. Here's just an example of a maternal, infant, and child healthcare health chart. As you can see, it's a little older, but it shows rates between 2005 and 2013. What this is showing are infant mortality rates. So these are infants who have died between birth all the way up to 1 year. These rates are per 1,000 live births. So this is not a percentage, it's not per 100, it's per 1,000. We look at non-Hispanic Black is at the first bar graph. And what we see is that has the highest number of infant mortality rates. So even though there has been some progress, right, in 2005, you see it's 13.63 per 1,000 live births. It has been reduced by 18%. So in 2013, it has been 11.11 per 1,000 live births. However, as you can see, this number is much higher than other ethnic and racial groups. So thus we need to look at what are some of the reasons why some of these groups suffer such large numbers in infant mortality rates. If I were working for the public health department, this would definitely be a cause of concern. And what I would do is look at indicators or precursors why these rates are so high for the non-majority racial and ethnic populations. When we look at family and reproductive health, so families are really the unit in which infants and children are nurtured, supported, and they really are the ones, the driving forces that drive health in infants and children. As we are moving into the future, we see that the definition of family has really changed over time. However, it generally consists of two parents and an extended family as well, depending on ethnic and cultural norms. Some of the research indicators when we look at the family unit. So unmarried women are more likely than married women to experience negative birth outcomes. What that suggests is that just being unmarried at the time of pregnancy and birth results in poor health outcomes for the children and for the moms as well. Married women are more likely than unmarried women, non-cohabiting women, which women who do not live with their partners, to initiate prenatal care early on in pregnancy. And perhaps this is one of the reasons why married women tend to have better health outcomes with birth and pregnancy compared to non-married women, because they initiate prenatal care earlier on. Married women are also less likely than non-married women to rely on government assistance to help pay for prenatal care. And this could partially be due to the fact that there are two people supporting the family, right? So there's more income available for that family than compared to a single person trying to pay for everything themselves. So family planning, the definition of it is that people are able to determine how many kids they want, the spacing between their kids, and the appropriate means to accomplish it. So it talks about, it includes contraception, it includes abortion, it includes access to government and non-governmental organizations. So it's really the ability to decide when you want to have children, how many children you want to have, if you want to have children. So it encompasses a lot of factors here. In the US, almost 1/2 of all pregnancies are unintended, meaning they're oopsies. Unintended pregnancies are mistimed or unwanted, and they are associated with negative health behaviors. What we see is that those who have an unintended pregnancy are more likely to receive prenatal care later on in the pregnancy. They don't initiate earlier on. That could partially be due to the fact that they don't know they're pregnant earlier on, so they're not looking for the signs of early pregnancy. They have inadequate weight gain. They're more likely to smoke, use alcohol, and other drugs during pregnancy. So abortion was legalized in 1973 with the Supreme Court case Roe versus Wade. When we look at who are the people who get abortions, the majority, which is not surprising, are women. So about 85% of all abortions are by unmarried women. Women between the ages of 20 and 29, it's about 60%. And the rates are highest among non-Hispanic Black women. When we look at maternal health, the effects of pregnancy and childbirth on women are really important indicators of health. Pregnancy and delivery can lead to serious health problems. It is a life-threatening condition that many women go through many times in their life. And to reduce the impact of negative health consequences, it's important to receive prenatal care, care while you are pregnant, and postnatal care. Another factor is maternal death, so dying during maternal age. And we look at maternal mortality, which is maternal death, and morbidity rates. Many of the causes that these have been linked to are poverty and limited education. So poverty is not only an income-based figure, but also lack of access to healthcare, facilities, safety, transportation, things like that. And then limited education is not knowing or understanding the importance of prenatal care. Preconception care is medical care provided to women of reproductive age to promote their health prior to conception or prior to being pregnant. That's preconception care. Whereas prenatal care is medical care from the time of conception, the time a woman becomes pregnant, until birth. And what studies have shown is that early and continuous preconception care and prenatal care really lead to better pregnancy health outcomes. Those who receive continuous preconception and prenatal care are less likely to give birth to low birth weight infants, which has health consequences. When we look at what are the factors that impact an infant's health, there are many different factors. And so this is just a list of a few of them. But one is the mother's health and her health behavior before she's pregnant and while she is pregnant, her genetic characteristics, the mother's level of prenatal care, the quality of delivery, the infant's environment after birth. Is the infant home with family? Are there, is it a safe environment? Nutrition and immunizations. When we look at infant mortality, oftentimes these numbers are a way to check the pulse of the nation's health. As I've mentioned earlier, the U.S. has seen a decline in infant mortality, and these have been attributed to improved disease surveillance, advanced clinical care, improved access to health care, better nutrition, and increased education. The leading causes of infant death in the U.S. are congenital abnormalities, so this has to do with genetics, preterm and low birth weight babies, and SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome. We look at childhood mortality, so this is the death rates of children between the ages of 1 and 9. So rates have generally declined in the past few years. However, unintentional injuries are the leading cause of death in children. The majority are motor vehicle deaths, and then especially those not wearing seatbelts or restraints, or not properly using the child's booster seats and child's car seats. So unintentional injuries amongst children is a significant economic, emotional, and disabling impact. Economic because of the costs associated with treatment and rehabilitation. Emotional is obviously the family is impacted by their children being injured. And disabling is if it's a permanent disability, the loss of productivity in society. When we see that when there are cases of child maltreatment, there is a strong community response needed. Community generally supports the proper treatment of children, and when there are maltreatment cases, the community rallies against that. And then the last is infectious diseases, which is why it's so important to immunize your children and follow the immunization schedule. The government has a program that was established in 1974, and it's called the Women, Infants, and Children Program, WIC. It's really a program designed to provide nutritional health-related goods and services to pregnant, postpartum, and breastfeeding women, including infants up to 1 year of age and children under 5 years old. The eligibility requirements are that you have to be a residency in the state you're applying. There are income requirements, and I should say that the income requirements are quite low. So the income. You have to be low income, and you must be at nutritional risk. In 2014, and I realize it's a little old, there's a little over 9 million participants in the U.S. Moving on to our next age groups, we'll talk about adolescents and adults. So adolescents and young adults range from the ages of 10 to 24. Adolescents generally regarded as puberty to maturity. Right, so puberty starts a little after 10, but for this sake, we'll say at 10, and then you are not fully mature until the age of 24. So that would be considered the period of adolescence. Adults are between the ages of 25 and 64. Years between 10 and 64 are some of the most productive years of people's lives in terms of work and contributing to society. It is also during this time that most people will enjoy the best health of their lives. And when we engage in behaviors that encourage health during that time frame, it really helps set the stage for how we will feel in later years. So adolescents and young adults really represents the future of the nation. Those will be the ones that take over, that will be our politicians and our doctors and our teachers. So we need to make sure that their health remains high. As I'm sure you remember, and as I'm sure I remember, adolescence is a really difficult stage. It's a period of transition from childhood to adult. It's when we sort of challenge our own beliefs and challenge our parents and society and try to figure it out on our own. During our young adulthood, it's when we really complete our physical growth and we experience significant life changes. So young adulthood, we are finishing high school or college. Physically, our body is finally done growing. Our brain is not fully formed until about 24 and 25, and it's at that point that you are considered an adult. So mortality, again, are death rates, and there have been a significant decline in death rates in adolescents and young adults. And most of this has been to injury and disease prevention, because like children, for adolescents, unintentional injuries tend to be the highest cause of death. Male mortality rates are higher than females. Most threats stem from behavior rather than disease. So again, here you have unintentional injuries is 41%, homicide is 17%, and suicide is 15%. And again, there are significant racial disparities among racial and the cause of death for those different categories. So here's a graph to show an example of the leading death rates for ages 15 through 24, starting in 1950 to 2013. And what you can see is the top leading cause of death are motor vehicle related injuries, so car accidents. As you can see, there has been a significant dip from 1970 to 2013. It might be interesting to note that the tipping point for that is the enactment of seatbelts. So there were seatbelts before, however, there were no laws or programs to promote the use of seatbelts. And so once you saw seatbelts become part of law, that you have to wear a seatbelt, you see the death rate significantly go down. Shows the importance of seatbelts. And so you can also see their homicide has gone down. Suicide has pretty much stayed the same, if not gone up a little bit. Cancer has gone significantly down, or down probably by half, although they're missing data in 2010. And then heart disease has gone down, but has remained steady since about 1980. Morbidity is being sick. It's disease. And so we look at communicable diseases amongst adolescents and adults. Measles immunizations are very important, as we've mentioned before. There have been uprises in certain areas of the country, and these have mainly been due to the fact that parents are not immunizing their children. The second one for diseases are sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections. This age group, which is not surprising, acquires nearly half of all new STDs in the US. Some STIs are viruses, meaning that you will have them forever, for life. But it's not surprising as this age group because generally during this time period, we tend to make decisions that are not the best for us because we're being rebellious. We tend to have more sexual partners. We're not married, so we're not in a monogamous long-term relationship, and we tend to experiment with different sexual behaviors. So the health behaviors of high school students, the concerns are unintentional injuries, and again, that's just making bad decisions, violence, tobacco use, alcohol and other drugs, sexual behaviors, and then those results are unintended pregnancies and STDs, physical activity versus sedentary behavior, so not having any activity, and overweight and weight control. And currently in the US, we are suffering from an obesity epidemic. And I think that one of the ways to really start addressing this issue is to improve the physical activity and fitness level of our younger students and children and adolescents so that they will continue those behaviors later in life. College students have some similar behaviors as high school students. Again, you see as the top one is unintentional injuries and violence, tobacco use, alcohol and other drugs, and sexual behaviors, which result in unintended pregnancies and STDs. So during this time, it's really important that our children and adolescents and adults, young adults, have protective factors. And these are factors or characteristics that reduce the effects of negative health. So examples are being connected to school. So students who feel more connected to school generally have better health outcomes than those that don't. Having community services around you, positive communities, there's not a lot of drug and alcohol use in your community, there's low violence, it's safe, it feels nice. All of those would be considered protective factors. Moving on to adults, these are between the ages of 25 and 64. And it represents more than half of the US total population. We look at mortality rates for adults, and these mostly come from chronic diseases, so non-communicable diseases. And many of these are associated with unhealthy behaviors and poor lifestyle choices. So if we can help adults improve lifestyle, we can improve the health of our adult population. And as a result, and we have done so, that the death rates for adults have declined in the past few years. The number one cause of death for adults between the ages of 45 all the way up to 64 is cancer. And for males, the three big ones are prostate, lung, and colorectal. For females, the three big ones are breast, lung, and colorectal. For cardiovascular disease, age-adjusted mortality drops over past 60. And so part of this, what we've seen is there's been a big public health effort related to smoking cessation, so really encouraging people not to smoke, increase physical activity and nutrition, although I still think we have a ways to go with both physical activity and nutrition amongst our adults. Some of the risk behaviors for chronic disease. For adults, the most significant ones are smoking, lack of exercise, BMI, which is your body mass index, so it's your weight, and alcohol use. Some of the promising contributions we have made towards public health for adults are, awareness and screening of certain conditions. So we now know that hypertension or high blood pressure it leads to heart disease and cardiovascular problems. And so now doctors closely monitor hypertension. So if you have high blood pressure, it will be monitored and you will be put on medication if it remains high. Same goes for diabetes and cholesterol. That concludes the presentation for week 4. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, email, call me, or come visit me. I am here to support your learning.